The stars looked the same as always. Daeho Kim sat in his pilot seat watching the empty space between Earth and Mars. His cargo ship, the Second Chance, hummed quietly as it moved through the darkness. He was hauling mining equipment to a colony on Mars. Nothing special, just another job to pay the bills. Daeho was 34 years old and tired. He had been a military engineer once, but that life ended badly. An accident killed 3 of his friends. He still had nightmares about it. Now he just flew cargo ships and tried not to think too much about the past. "Ship, play some music," he said to the computer. "Which playlist?" the AI asked. "Surprise me." Old rock music filled the cabin. Daeho smiled a little. His mother used to play this stuff when he was a kid. She was probably watching the news back on Earth right now, drinking tea and worrying about him like always. The ship's alarm started beeping. Daeho sat up straight. The screen showed something strange near Jupiter. The gravity readings were all wrong. Something massive was out there bending space itself. "Ship, what am I looking at?" "Unknown. The mass is equivalent to a small moon, but there is nothing on the navigation charts." Daeho's stomach tightened. He had heard rumors about strange sightings in deep space, but he never believed them. People saw what they wanted to see out here. Space was empty and boring, and that was fine with him. Then his screen went white. Every system shut down at once. The music stopped. The lights went out. Even the quiet hum of the engines disappeared. The Second Chance was dead in space. "Ship? Ship, respond." Nothing. Daeho felt his heart pounding in his chest. In space, a dead ship meant death. No power meant no heat, no air recycling, no life support. He had maybe 12 hours before things got really bad. Emergency lights flickered on, casting red shadows everywhere. Daeho pulled himself to the manual control panel and started checking systems. Everything was fried. Not broken, not damaged. Just completely dead, like someone had flipped a switch and turned off his entire ship. That was when he saw it through the window. A ship, but not like any ship he had ever seen. It was huge, maybe 10 times the size of a military carrier. The design was all wrong, with angles that hurt to look at and surfaces that seemed to absorb light instead of reflecting it. And it was getting closer. "Okay, Daeho," he said to himself. "Stay calm. First contact protocol. Be friendly. Don't do anything stupid." His ship shuddered. Something grabbed it, pulling it toward the alien vessel. Daeho tried the manual controls, but nothing worked. He was completely helpless, being dragged like a fish on a hook. The alien ship opened. A hangar bay, dark and enormous. The Second Chance was pulled inside and the door closed behind him. Daeho watched through the window as lights came on, revealing a space the size of a football stadium. There were other ships in here too, dozens of them, all different shapes and sizes, all dead and dark like his own. "Trophies," Daeho whispered. "These are trophies." His training kicked in. Observe, assess, plan. He was probably going to die, but that was no reason to panic. He started looking for anything useful. His cargo was just mining equipment, nothing that could be used as a weapon. His ship had no weapons at all. It was a civilian freighter. Something moved outside the window. Daeho pressed his face to the glass and saw them. Aliens. Real aliens. They were tall, maybe 9 feet, with bodies covered in some kind of natural armor. They moved on 6 legs, smooth and fast like insects. Their heads had too many eyes glittering in the harsh light. One of them looked directly at him. Daeho felt a chill run down his spine. Those eyes were intelligent, cold, calculating. This was not going to be a friendly first contact. The airlock on his ship started opening. Daeho had not touched the controls. They were forcing it open from outside. He had maybe 30 seconds before they came in. He grabbed his emergency kit. Flashlight, water, basic tools, medical supplies. Not much, but it was something. He also grabbed a photo from the dashboard. It showed him, his sister Jisoo, and his friend Minho at a beach party 3 years ago. Everyone was smiling. Those were simpler times. The airlock opened completely. 3 aliens entered his ship. They moved carefully, studying everything. One of them pointed some kind of device at Daeho. He felt a tingling sensation wash over his body. A scan, probably. Daeho raised his hand slowly. "Hello, I am Daeho Kim from Earth. I come in peace." He felt stupid saying it, like something from an old movie. But what else could he say? The aliens did not respond. They grabbed him with appendages that were surprisingly gentle. They lifted him off his feet and carried him out of his ship. Daeho did not fight. Fighting would just get him killed faster. They took him through corridors that twisted and turned in ways that made no sense. The walls glowed with a faint blue light. Strange symbols covered every surface. The air smelled like copper and something else he could not identify. Finally, they brought him to a cell. It was transparent on all sides, like a glass box in the middle of a laboratory. They put him inside and the wall sealed shut. Daiho tested them carefully. Solid, no obvious weak points. He was trapped. More aliens arrived. These ones wore different markings on their armor. Scientists, maybe, or doctors. They started scanning him again with various devices. Lights and sounds that made his teeth ache. One of them took a small sample of his blood. Daiho winced but did not pull away. Hours passed. The aliens studied him like he was a bug under a microscope. They never spoke, at least not in any way he could hear. Maybe they communicated differently. Daiho tried to stay calm, but fear was creeping in. What did these creatures want? Why had they taken him? Then something changed. A new alien entered the room. This one was different, bigger. The armor was darker and covered with symbols that might have been rank insignias. The other aliens moved aside immediately, showing respect or fear. The large alien approached Daiho's cell. It stared at him for a long moment. Then a voice filled the air. It was mechanical, translated somehow. Human. You are from the planet called Earth. Daiho nodded. Yes, and you are? I am Captain Nix of the Vrexian Empire. You have been selected for study before your species is eliminated. The words hit Daiho like a punch to the stomach. Eliminated? What do you mean eliminated? Your planet will be sterilized in 72 hours. This is standard procedure. All potential threats are removed before they can become actual threats. You should feel honored. Few specimens are chosen for examination before termination. Daiho's mind raced. 72 hours. 3 days. That was all Earth had left. His mother, his sister, his friend Minho, everyone, everything gone. You cannot do this, Daiho said. His voice was shaking now. We have done nothing to you. We did not even know you existed. That is irrelevant. Your species shows signs of rapid technological advancement and aggressive territorial expansion. These are the primary indicators of future threat potential. The Vrexian Empire has survived for 10,000 years by eliminating threats before they emerge. We have processed 847 species using this method. Your species will be 848. Captain Nix turned to leave. Daiho pressed against the wall of his cell. Wait, please. There has to be another way. We can negotiate. We can prove we are not a threat. Negotiation is inefficient. Proof is unnecessary. The decision has been made. The alien walked away, leaving Daiho alone in his transparent prison. Daiho sat down on the floor. His hands were shaking. Earth had 3 days to live, and he was the only human who knew about it. The only one who might be able to do something about it. But what could one cargo pilot do against an empire that had destroyed 847 other civilizations? He looked at the photo he had grabbed from his ship. Jisoo was laughing in the picture, holding a drink and making a silly face. Minho had his arm around both of them. They looked so happy. I will find a way, Daiho whispered. I do not know how yet, but I will find a way. The aliens continued their work around him, cold and efficient. They did not know it yet, but they had made a mistake. They thought Daiho was just another specimen to study before extinction. They did not understand what humans were really capable of when everything was on the line. And Daiho was about to teach them. Daiho spent the first few hours in his cell doing nothing but watching. The Vrexian scientists moved around him in patterns that seemed random at first, but slowly he started to see the structure. They always checked certain instruments in the same order. They changed shifts at regular intervals. And most importantly, they were not perfect. One of them, a smaller Vrexian with lighter-colored armor, kept making small errors. It would bump into equipment or take a moment too long to complete tasks. The others would stop and correct it, showing clear irritation in their body language. Daiho filed this information away. In any group, there were weak links. On the second day of his captivity, the Vrexians brought him food. It was a gray paste that smelled like nothing and tasted even worse. But Daiho ate it anyway. He needed to keep his strength up. While eating, he noticed the food came through a small panel in the wall. The panel had seams around it. Those seams had to connect to something. You do not show fear, a mechanical voice said. Daiho looked up to see Captain Nix standing outside his cell. This is unusual. Most specimens show significant distress at this stage. Deho shrugged. Being scared does not help anything. Besides, your ship is fascinating. I have been trying to figure out how your containment system works. The energy field is impressive. Captain Nix tilted its head. The gesture looked almost curious. You are analyzing our technology while facing termination? Old habit. I used to be an engineer. When I see something interesting, I cannot help but want to understand how it works. Deho smiled. Your power distribution system is really elegant. Everything is connected to a central node, right? Very efficient. The Vrexian was silent for a moment. You understand our systems from observation alone? Some of them. Engineering principles are universal. Energy has to flow from somewhere to somewhere else. I just follow the logic. Deho paused. Though I have to admit, some of your technology is way beyond anything we have on Earth. That gravity manipulation system you used to pull my ship in? We have theories about that, but we cannot actually do it yet. Captain Nick seemed to consider this. Then it walked away without another word. Deho went back to studying his cell. The conversation had been useful. He now knew the Vrexians were not used to specimens who talked back. That was an advantage, however small. Hours later, something unexpected happened. The clumsy Vrexian scientist was working near his cell, adjusting some equipment. It reached for a tool and accidentally knocked over a container. The container rolled under a console, and the Vrexian had to bend down to retrieve it. While doing so, it bumped a panel on the wall. The panel popped open slightly. The Vrexian quickly closed the panel and looked around to see if anyone had noticed. The other scientists were busy with their work. The clumsy one hurried away, clearly embarrassed. But Deho had seen everything. That panel was not locked properly now. It was still closed, but the internal mechanism had not clicked back into place. Deho did not react. He lay down on the floor of his cell and closed his eyes, pretending to sleep. But his mind was racing. That panel might contain access to the ship's systems, or maybe just maintenance equipment. Either way, it was something. A tiny crack in the otherwise perfect Vrexian efficiency. The next day, Captain Nix returned with another Vrexian. This one was even larger, with armor so dark it seemed to absorb light. The symbols on its armor were more elaborate. This is Commander Thex, Captain Nix said. He commands the fleet. He wishes to test you. The wall of Deho's cell became transparent on one side, revealing another room. The room was empty except for various objects scattered across the floor. Tools, components, materials, all alien in design. You will enter this chamber, Commander Thex said through the translator. His voice was deeper than Captain Nix's, more authoritative. You have 1 hour to escape using the available materials. Failure results in immediate termination. A door opened in Deho's cell, leading to the test chamber. He walked through slowly, looking at everything. The door sealed behind him. He was alone in the room with a bunch of alien technology and 60 minutes to live. Deho sat down in the middle of the floor and closed his eyes. This surprised the Vrexians watching from outside. They had expected panic or immediate action. Instead, the human just sat there. What is it doing? Captain Nix asked. Unclear, Commander Thex replied. Continue observation. Inside the chamber, Deho was thinking. His mother had taught him meditation when he was young. She said that when problems seemed impossible, the first step was always to be calm. Panic made you stupid. Calm made you smart. He spent 10 minutes just breathing and thinking. He did not understand Vrexian technology. He had no training with their tools. But he knew engineering. He knew physics. And most importantly, he knew that all technology had the same basic requirements: power, control, structure. When Deho opened his eyes, he stood up and started examining the objects. He picked up each one, felt its weight, tested how it moved. Some were obviously tools. Others were components or materials. He did not know what any of them were supposed to do, but he could make guesses based on their properties. This rod conducted electricity. He could tell from the material. This panel had circuits printed on it. This cylinder contained some kind of fluid under pressure. He arranged the objects in groups based on their apparent function. 30 minutes passed. The Vrexians watching him seemed confused by his methodical approach. They had expected either genius or failure, not this careful analysis. Deho looked at the door. It was locked electronically. He could see a panel next to it with controls. The door probably opened when the panel received the correct signal, so he needed to send that signal. But he did not know what the signal was or how to generate it, unless he did not need to know. What if he just sent every possible signal at once? A brute force approach, not elegant, but it might work. He started building. He connected the conducting rod to the circuit panel. He used the pressurized cylinder as a power source. He had no idea if this would work, but the basic principle was sound. Create an electromagnetic pulse broad enough to hit every frequency the door's lock might respond to. 45 minutes gone. 15 left. Deho's hands were shaking as he made the final connections. The device looked ridiculous. It was held together with pieces of alien material he had bent into clips. Wires crossed at odd angles. The whole thing might explode instead of working. "This is not possible," one of the Vrexian scientists said, watching from outside. "The human has no knowledge of our systems. Whatever it is building cannot function." "Yet it continues to work with purpose," Commander Thex observed. Curious. 55 minutes. Deho carried his crude device to the door. He had no way to test it. He would only get one chance. If it did not work, he was dead. If it worked but caused an explosion, he was dead. There were a lot of ways this could end badly. "Here goes nothing," Deho muttered. He activated the device. The device hummed. Then it screamed, a high-pitched whine that made Deho's teeth hurt. Sparks shot out from several connections. The smell of burning metal filled the air. The door's control panel flickered. And the door opened. Just a few inches and only for about 3 seconds, but it opened. Deho threw himself forward, wedging his body into the gap. The door tried to close on him, but he pushed with all his strength. His shoulders screamed in pain. He got one arm through, then his head, then pulled the rest of his body after. He collapsed on the floor outside the chamber, breathing hard. 58 minutes. 2 minutes to spare. The Vrexian scientists stared at him in silence. Then Commander Thex spoke. "Impossible. The device the human created should not function. Our technology operates on principles it cannot possibly understand." Captain Nix approached Deho, who was still lying on the floor catching his breath. "How did you accomplish this?" Deho laughed, though it came out more like a cough. "I did not understand your technology, so I treated it like broken equipment. When you do not know what something is supposed to do, you just test what it can do and work from there." "This adaptability is concerning," Commander Thex said to Captain Nix. "If this is representative of human cognitive capability, our threat assessment may be inadequate." "Agreed. I will increase containment protocols and recommend advancing the termination schedule." Deho felt cold despite his exhaustion. He had just proven he was dangerous. And the Vrexian response to danger was elimination. By escaping, he might have just made things worse for Earth. But as they dragged him back to his cell, now with additional restraints and guards, Deho smiled slightly. He had learned something important. The Vrexians were powerful and their technology was advanced, but they were rigid. They expected things to work according to their understanding. Humans were not rigid. Humans adapted. And somewhere in that difference was Earth's only chance of survival. Commander Thex could not stop thinking about the human. In 300 years of military service, he had never encountered anything like this. The specimen should have failed the test. The odds of success without knowledge of Vrexian technology were essentially zero, yet the human had succeeded. He decided to speak with the creature directly. Captain Nix had advised against it, but Thex needed to understand. In 42 hours, the Vrexian fleet would sterilize Earth. Before that happened, he wanted answers. They brought Deho to a secure meeting room. The human was restrained but calm. His eyes moved constantly, taking in every detail of his surroundings. Always watching, always analyzing. "I am Commander Thex. I lead the Vrexian fleet that will destroy your world." "Nice to meet you." Deho said. I would shake your hand, but I am tied up at the moment. The translator struggled with the concept of a handshake. Thex ignored the comment. Explain how you escaped the chamber. I already told your people. I did not understand your technology, so I just applied basic engineering principles. Energy goes in, something happens, energy comes out. I just needed to create enough energy at enough different frequencies to trip whatever lock was on that door. But you had no training, no prior knowledge of our systems. Deho shrugged as well as he could with the restraints. When you do not know the right way to do something, you try everything until something works. Humans call it improvising. Thex was silent for a moment. This ability to adapt without prior knowledge. Is this common among your species? Pretty much. We are not the smartest or the strongest, but we are really good at figuring things out as we go. My friend Minho used to say that humans specialize in not specializing. We can do a little bit of everything. This makes your species more dangerous than anticipated. Or more useful, Deho countered. Look, I know your people have been eliminating other species for thousands of years. But has that actually made you safer? Or has it just made you lonely? The question caught Thex off guard. No specimen had ever asked about Vrexian motivations before. They usually begged for mercy or tried to escape. This human wanted to have a philosophical discussion. The Vrexian Empire has survived by eliminating threats. This is proven strategy. Sure, but you have also eliminated 847 potential allies. 847 chances to learn something new, to grow, to become more than you were. Deho leaned forward as much as his restraints allowed. My grandmother survived a war on Earth. She told me something I never forgot. She said that surviving is not the same as living. Maybe your species has been surviving for 10,000 years, but have you been living? Thex had no response to this. The concept was alien to Vrexian thinking. Survival was the only goal. Everything else was secondary. Tell me about your species, Thex said finally. Explain why Earth should not be eliminated. Deho thought for a moment. We are messy. We fight each other all the time. We make mistakes constantly. We have wars and famines and disasters, but we keep trying to do better. My sister Jisoo designs habitats on Mars. She is trying to make places where humans can live off Earth, not because we have to, but because we want to explore, to grow. Expansion is aggressive behavior. No, it is curious behavior. There is a difference. We do not expand to conquer. We expand to discover, to learn, to meet new people and see new things. Deho paused. What is it like on your homeworld? Again, the unexpected question. Thex found himself answering. Our world is harsh. We evolved as the only intelligent species. There was no competition, no cooperation, only survival against a hostile environment. We developed technology out of necessity. That sounds lonely, Deho said quietly. On Earth, we had to learn to live with each other. Dozens of different cultures, hundreds of languages. We fought a lot, but we also learned to work together. Because we had to. This sharing of resources with competitors is inefficient. Maybe. But it taught us something you never learned. How to trust. How to compromise. How to see value in differences instead of just seeing threats. Thex considered this. The human's words were unsettling. For the first time in his life, he wondered if the Vrexian doctrine might be incomplete. Not wrong necessarily, but missing something important. I will show you why resistance is futile, Thex said. He gestured and the wall became transparent. Outside was space filled with hundreds of Vrexian ships. Each one bristled with weapons. Each one capable of destroying cities. That is your fleet, Deho said. Impressive. How many ships? 342 capital ships. Over 2,000 support vessels. And they all report to you? To the command structure. I coordinate all major decisions through this flagship. Deho nodded slowly, studying the fleet. Centralized command. Makes sense for efficiency. But what happens if this flagship is damaged? This ship cannot be damaged by human technology. I am sure that is true. But hypothetically, if something did happen to this ship, what would the fleet do? Secondary command protocols would activate. But this scenario is not relevant. Still, it is an interesting weakness. All that power dependent on one central point. On Earth, we learned a long time ago that putting all your eggs in one basket is dangerous. Deho smiled. We are not very good at building perfect systems, but we are really good at breaking them. Thex felt something he had never experienced before. Doubt. This human had identified a theoretical vulnerability in Vrexian fleet doctrine in less than a minute, a vulnerability that had never been exploited because no species had ever survived long enough to try. Your observations are irrelevant. The decision to eliminate Earth stands. Then I have one last request, Deho said. Let me send a message home. My mother, my sister, my friend. They deserve to know what is coming. They deserve a chance to say goodbye. Impossible. We cannot risk you sending tactical information. Then you send it. You can check every word. I just want my family to know that I was thinking of them at the end. Thex was about to refuse automatically, but he stopped. The request was emotional, not tactical, and part of him wanted to understand human emotions better. I will consider it. They took Deho back to his cell. But something had changed. The Vrexians were no longer certain. Their prisoner had made them question things they had never questioned before. That night, Deho lay awake in his cell. He had memorized the patrol patterns. He knew which scientists were careless. He had located every potential weakness in the room. And that panel, the one that had been knocked loose, was still not properly secured. He could see it from his cell. He had one chance. One desperate, probably suicidal chance. If he could get to that panel, he might be able to access the ship's communication systems. He did not need long. Just a few seconds to broadcast a warning to Earth. The food dispenser in his cell activated. They were feeding him again. Deho had been watching this dispenser carefully. It used a mechanical arm to deliver the food tray. When the arm extended for just a moment, the force field around his cell weakened slightly to let the arm through. It was not much, but it might be enough. Deho waited until the guards changed shifts. The new guards were always a bit slower for the first few minutes, still adjusting to their post. He had timed this moment carefully. The food dispenser activated. The arm extended through the force field. Deho moved fast. He grabbed the arm and pulled hard. Alarms screamed instantly, but he ignored them. He used the arm as leverage to throw himself at the weakened spot in the force field. Pain shot through his body as the field resisted him. It felt like being electrocuted and frozen at the same time, but he pushed through, falling out onto the laboratory floor. Vrexian guards were already moving toward him. He had seconds, maybe less. Deho ran to the loose panel and ripped it open. Inside were wires, circuits, components he did not understand. But he did not need to understand. He just needed to create noise. He grabbed two main power conduits and slammed them together. Sparks exploded. The lights flickered. And for exactly 3.7 seconds before the guards tackled him, Deho's improvised signal broadcasted on every frequency the ship used. The signal was crude and fragmented. But it contained everything Deho had learned. Fleet composition, command structure, tactical patterns, shield frequencies, and most importantly, a message to Earth. They were coming, but they could be beaten. The guards hit him hard. Pain exploded across his ribs. They dragged him back to his cell, which now had triple the force field strength. Captain Nick stood outside the cell, fury evident in its body language. The signal was too short, too fragmented. It could not possibly reach your planet. Deho smiled through the pain. Maybe, or maybe Earth has better receivers than you think. Either way, I had to try. This was foolish. You have gained nothing except punishment. I gained hope, Deho said. And sometimes that is all you need. Unknown to the Vrexians, Deho's signal had reached Luna. A communications officer named Hieri was monitoring deep space frequencies when something impossible appeared on her screen. A human signal. From beyond the orbit of Mars, fragmented, damaged, but readable. She read the message 3 times before she believed it. Then she ran to wake her supervisor. Earth had 31 hours until the end of the world. But now they knew it was coming. And knowledge, even terrible knowledge, was better than ignorance. Hana Cho had not slept in 26 hours. As the coordinator of United Earth Defense, she now faced the impossible task of preparing humanity for extinction. The decoded message from Deho Kim lay on her desk, a mixture of technical data and desperate hope. It is not enough, General Taiyang said. He stood by the window of her office looking out at Earth. We have their fleet composition, some tactical patterns, but we cannot fight them. Our weapons are centuries behind theirs. Then we do not fight them the way they expect, Hana replied. She had been studying the data all night looking for any advantage. Look at this. Every Vrexian ship moves in perfect formation. Every action is coordinated through their flagship. They fight like a machine, so machines break when you introduce chaos. What if we do not try to fight them ship to ship? What if we just confuse them? Taeyang turned from the window. Explain. We launch everything we have. Every ship, military or civilian. No formation, no strategy, just pure chaos. 10,000 ships moving in completely unpredictable patterns. Their tactical systems will not know how to respond. That is suicide. Staying on Earth is suicide. At least this way, we do something. We show them that humans do not just wait to die. Hana looked at him. Daeho bought us time with his message. The least we can do is use it. Taeyang was quiet for a long moment. Then he nodded. I will send the order. Every available ship to launch in 6 hours. No training, no formation, just get into space and head for the Vrexian fleet. It might not work, Hana warned. Nothing might work. But at least we will go down fighting. The call went out across Earth. Every ship capable of reaching space was to launch immediately. Cargo haulers, mining vessels, luxury yachts, military fighters, research craft, even the experimental ships that were not quite finished. If it could fly, it was going up. On Mars, Jisoo Kim heard the news and immediately volunteered. Her transport ship was designed for cargo, not combat, but she did not care. Her brother was out there somewhere, probably dead, and Earth needed every ship it could get. Minho, Daeho's friend, was already in space. He had been flying patrol duty near Jupiter when the order came through. He diverted course toward the Vrexian fleet immediately. He had failed Daeho once before, 3 years ago in that accident that destroyed their careers. He would not fail him again. On the Vrexian flagship, Commander Thex received reports of the human fleet launching. He studied the tactical display with growing confusion. The human ships were not forming any recognizable battle formation. They were scattered, moving at different speeds, some even going in circles. Analysis, he commanded. Unknown, Commander. The pattern does not match any recorded military formation. Some vessels appear to be civilian. Many are unarmed. Their trajectory calculations are inconsistent. They are retreating? Negative. All vessels are approaching our position, but tactical systems cannot predict their movements. There is no pattern. Captain Nix entered the command center. The humans are launching a chaotic attack. This was predicted in the prisoner's psychological profile. They prefer improvisation over organization. But why? Thex asked. They must know they cannot win. Perhaps winning is not their goal. Perhaps they simply refuse to surrender. Thex thought about his conversation with Daeho. The human had said something about this, about humans being good at not giving up, at trying even when success was impossible. At the time, Thex had dismissed it as irrational thinking. Now he was watching it in action. 10,000 human ships approached the Vrexian fleet, some broadcast music. Others sent greetings in multiple languages. A few even transmitted recipes and cultural information, as if this were a friendly meeting instead of a battle. Weapon systems ready, the tactical officer reported. We can destroy their entire fleet in approximately 4 minutes. Thex stared at the tactical display. 4 minutes to end humanity, to complete his mission, to add another species to the list of 847 eliminated threats. It should be simple. He had done this before, but he hesitated. Something the human specimen had said kept echoing in his mind, about survival not being the same as living, about eliminating 847 potential allies instead of threats. Commander, awaiting your order to fire. Thex made a decision that would change galactic history. Hold fire. Open a communication channel to the human fleet. The command center fell silent. Every Vrexian present turned to stare at their commander. Captain Nix spoke carefully. Commander, this is against protocol. The termination order has been issued. Protocol may be inadequate. Open the channel. Commander Thex, with respect, the Council will demand explanation for this delay. Then I will explain. Thex moved to the communication station himself. This is Commander Thex of the Vrexian Domination Fleet. I am transmitting to the human vessels. On Earth, Hana Cho nearly dropped her coffee when the Vrexian transmission came through. The alien voice translated to human language filled the command center. Human vessels, hold your position. I request negotiation. The word negotiation caused an uproar in the Vrexian command center. Such a word had never been used in Vrexian military operations before. Officers looked at each other in shock. Some reached for weapons, uncertain if their commander had been compromised somehow. Negotiation? Hana repeated. She looked at Taiyang. Did that alien just ask to negotiate? I heard it too. What do we do? We negotiate. Hana activated the response channel. This is Hana Cho of United Earth Defense. We accept your request for negotiation. On the Vrexian flagship, Thex ordered his officers to stand down. Bring the human prisoner to the command center. They brought Daiho in, still in restraints, still bruised from his escape attempt. He looked around the command center with interest before his eyes settled on Thex. You called off the attack, Daiho said. Temporarily. Your species has demonstrated qualities that were not anticipated. I have questions before proceeding with termination. Questions are good. Questions mean thinking. And thinking means maybe you are not as certain as you were before. I am not uncertain, Thex said, but his voice lacked conviction. However, your people's response to inevitable destruction has been unexpected. They launch ships they know cannot win. They transmit cultural data instead of threats. They show no fear of death. We are afraid, Daiho corrected. We are terrified. But humans learned a long time ago that fear does not mean surrender. Sometimes you have to do the terrifying thing anyway just because it is the right thing. This is irrational. Maybe. But it is also human. You can kill us all today. Your weapons are strong enough. But you should know that if you give us time, if you let us survive, we will eventually become your equals. Not through conquest or elimination, but through adaptation and learning. And when that day comes, we would rather be your friends than your enemies. Thex looked at the tactical display. 10,000 human ships waited for his decision. 10,000 vessels that should terrify no one, that pose no real military threat. Yet somehow they had made him pause. They had made him question 10,000 years of Rexian doctrine. Captain Nix, Thex said quietly, what do you think of the human specimen? Nix was silent for a moment. It is unlike any species we have encountered. It adapts rapidly. It shows creativity in problem solving. And it refuses to accept defeat even when defeat is certain. These qualities are concerning or valuable, Thex said. He turned to face his officers. I am postponing Earth's termination. We will negotiate with the humans. The protests were immediate and loud. Officers argued that this violated every protocol, that the Council would never approve, that showing mercy was showing weakness. Thex silenced them with a gesture. For 10,000 years we have survived by eliminating threats. And for 10,000 years we have been alone. Perhaps it is time to try something different. He looked at Daiho. Perhaps it is time to try living instead of just surviving. Daiho felt tears in his eyes. He had done it. Somehow, impossibly, one ordinary cargo pilot had convinced the galaxy's most feared species to stop and think instead of just killing. Thank you, Daiho said quietly. Do not thank me yet, Thex replied. This negotiation may still fail. Your species may still face elimination, but you have earned the chance to try. That is more than 847 other species received. A chance is all we need, Daiho said. Humans are really good at making the most of chances. The Vrexian fleet held position. The human fleet waited nervously. And somewhere between Mars and Jupiter, two species that should have been enemies prepared to talk instead of fight. It was a small beginning, but sometimes small beginnings lead to big changes. The negotiations took 3 days. They met in a neutral space, a virtual environment where both humans and Vrexians could communicate safely. Hana Cho led the human delegation. Commander Thex led the Vrexians. And Daiho Kim sat between them, translating not just words but meanings. The first day was awkward. Neither species knew how to negotiate with equals. The Vrexians had only ever given orders or eliminated resistance. Humans had never met an alien species before, let alone one that had nearly destroyed them. We do not understand your purpose, one Vrexian officer stated. If you are not expanding to conquer, why expand at all? Curiosity, Hana replied. We want to know what is out there. We want to meet other species, learn new things, see new places, not to own them, just to experience them. This curiosity could become a threat, or it could become friendship, Daiho interjected. Look, you Vrexians evolved alone. You never had neighbors. You never had to share. But we did. Earth taught us that sharing resources is better than fighting over them. That cooperation produces better results than competition. This cooperation assumes both parties act in good faith. Captain Nix said. How do we know humans will not betray us once they gain technology? You do not know, Hana admitted. Just like we do not know if you will keep your word not to eliminate us. Trust is a risk. But it is a risk worth taking. The second day was harder. They discussed specifics. What would a partnership look like? How would they share information without either side becoming too powerful? How would disputes be resolved? We propose exchange programs, Taeyang suggested. Humans live on Vrexian ships. Vrexians live on Earth. We learn about each other directly, not through reports or assumptions. This exposes both species to potential infiltration, a Vrexian security officer objected. Yes, Daeho agreed, but it also builds relationships. It is hard to hate someone after you have lived with them, learned their language, eaten their food, heard their stories. Trust has to start somewhere. Commander Thex considered this. The human specimen makes a valid point. The Vrexian Empire has eliminated 847 species, but we have learned nothing from any of them. Perhaps that is our greatest failure. The third day was when they finally reached agreement. It was not perfect. Both sides had concerns, but they had created something unprecedented, a plan for two completely different species to coexist. I will volunteer as the first human ambassador to the Vrexian fleet, Daeho said. I already know your ship, your people, your technology. I can help bridge the gap. And I will establish the first Vrexian embassy on Earth, Captain Nix announced. The other Vrexians looked surprised, but Nix continued. I have studied the human specimen more than anyone. I understand their behavior patterns. This makes me suitable for the position. Daeho smiled at that. The alien who had captured him as a specimen would now live on Earth and learn what it meant to be human. There was a certain poetry to it. The human fleet began returning to Earth, carrying news of the agreement. Jisoo cried when she heard her brother was alive. Minho laughed with relief. On Earth, people celebrated in the streets not just because they had survived, but because they had made first contact and it had not ended in war. Daeho's mother called him via the communication link. You always did cause trouble, she said, but her voice was warm with pride. Now come home soon. I want to meet these aliens who thought they could kill my son. I will, Mom, I promise. But first I have work to do here. Over the following weeks, the partnership began to take shape. Human engineers worked with Vrexian scientists, sharing knowledge carefully. Vrexian officers learned about human culture, attending classes on Earth history and philosophy. It was strange and difficult and sometimes frustrating for both sides. But it worked. Slowly, carefully. Two species that should have been enemies became something else. Not quite friends yet, but no longer threats. Partners in an experiment that neither fully understood, but both were committed to trying. 6 months after first contact, Daeho stood on the observation deck of the Vrexian flagship. It was the same view he had seen when Thex first showed him the fleet, trying to demonstrate humanity's helplessness. But everything had changed since then. Commander Thex joined him at the window. The Vrexian commander had changed over the months. He asked questions now. He admitted uncertainty. He even made what might have been jokes, though Daeho was still not entirely sure about Vrexian humor. Do you believe this partnership will succeed? Thex asked. Daeho thought about it. I do not know. We are very different. There will be problems, misunderstandings, conflicts, but I think we have a chance. And sometimes a chance is all you need. Your species is peculiar. You face impossible situations with optimism. We call it hope. It is what keeps us going when logic says we should give up. Daeho smiled. Though I have to admit I never expected to become an ambassador. I was just a cargo pilot trying to deliver mining equipment. That cargo is still drifting in space near Jupiter, Thex observed. We detected it on our sensors. I know. I will recover it someday. I made a promise to deliver it and I keep my promises. Daeho paused, even if I am a bit late. Below them, through the observation window, Earth was visible. Blue and green and beautiful, still alive, still home to billions of humans who had nearly died because of a doctrine that valued survival over understanding. I made a difficult decision, Thex said quietly. Many in the Vrexian High Council opposed negotiation. Some still believe I made a mistake. Do you think you made a mistake? No. For 10,000 years, the Vrexian Empire eliminated threats and learned nothing. We survived, but we did not grow. We were powerful, but we were alone. Thex turned to look at Daeho. Your species taught me something important. Strength is not just about power. It is also about adaptation, cooperation, and the courage to try something new. That is very human thinking, Deho observed. Perhaps, or perhaps it is simply correct thinking that the Vrexians never considered before. News of the human-Vrexian partnership spread across the galaxy. Other species, hiding from the Vrexians or preparing for eventual conflict, began to reconsider their positions. If the most feared species in the galaxy could negotiate instead of eliminate, perhaps a new era was beginning. Some species reached out cautiously, asking about joining the partnership. Others remained suspicious, convinced this was a trap. A few declared that any species willing to trust the Vrexians was foolish and deserved whatever happened to them. But the partnership continued. Human students attended Vrexian academies. Vrexian scientists worked in human laboratories. Captain Nix opened an embassy in Seoul and developed a taste for coffee, which she claimed was similar to a Vrexian stimulant beverage. Jisoo visited the flagship to see her brother. She brought him fresh fruit from Earth and stories about home. She also brought designs for joint human-Vrexian habitats that could house both species comfortably. Deho was proud of her. She had taken this strange situation and found a way to help. Minho came too, now working as a liaison officer. He and Deho finally talked about the accident that had ended their military careers. It was painful but necessary. They could not change the past, but they could move forward. And sometimes that was enough. A year after first contact, Deho received special permission to take a small ship and retrieve his cargo from near Jupiter. Thex came with him, curious about this human insistence on keeping promises. They found the container drifting exactly where Deho's ship had been captured. It was undamaged, the mining equipment inside still perfectly preserved in the vacuum of space. This cargo is worth perhaps a few thousand credits, Thex observed. Yet you spent considerable time and effort to recover it. Why? Because I made a promise, Deho replied simply, and because this container started everything. If I had not been hauling this cargo, I would not have been captured. If I had not been captured, we would not have met. If we had not met, Earth would be dead and you would still be eliminating species instead of talking to them. Thex considered this. So this ordinary container changed galactic history. That is the thing about ordinary things, Deho said. Sometimes they turn out to be extraordinary. They loaded the container onto their ship and delivered it to Mars. The colony administrator was surprised to receive equipment that was over a year late. But she accepted it with grace. She had heard the story of Daeho Kim, the cargo pilot who saved Earth. Everyone had. Later, as they flew back to the flagship, Daeho looked out at the stars. They looked the same as they always had, but everything else had changed. Humanity was no longer alone in the universe. The Vrexians were no longer feared exterminators. And one ordinary cargo pilot had somehow helped make that possible. What will you do next? Thex asked. Daeho smiled. I have no idea, but I am sure it will be interesting. With humans, things usually are. The galaxy's most feared species had given up on annihilating Earth after seeing a human in action. Not because the human was particularly strong or smart or special, but because he refused to give up, refused to stop trying, and showed that there were other options besides elimination and surrender. Sometimes the greatest strength is not power, but the courage to try something different, to adapt, to hope, to believe that even the most impossible situations might have solutions if you are willing to look for them.